Hi there, I'm Tracy. Welcome to my channel if you haven't been here before, or welcome back if you watch my videos, and thank you so much. I love to upcycle and turn thrifted items into one-of-a-kind, beautiful, unique pieces. And I sold for over a decade online and even before that in booth spaces and stuff. And I retired from selling, so now I am just doing tutorials on all the things I've learned over the years and things that have sold. And we're making this kaftan today. You can call it a kaftan or a maxi boho dress. And have you ever been to the thrift store and see all these beautiful scarves and like, oh, they're so beautiful. What do I make with them? I can't think of. Well, this is the perfect tutorial for you then, because this is made with lots and lots of different scarves. It started with a top, and then this is part of a dress, but all the ruffles and sleeves are scarves. So I'm going to show you how to make this. So let's get started. I'm starting with this top. And the reason I liked this is it has kind of a wild, kind of bohemian hippie looking pattern. And it has the cap sleeves. This is a polyester spandex blend. I would have liked more of a chiffon, but you know, I make do with what I have. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to crop this in the front. I'm going to do a high-low design. Now, you don't have to. You can leave it the way it is. You could crop the whole thing, but I'm going to make an arc, cut an arch out in the front so that my dress will be shorter in front and longer in back. So with mine, let me find my pin. I may lose a little bit of the ruffle. I'm going to try not to, but I'm going to pin up this bottom ruffle before I cut, and I am just going to the side seam, and about an inch in front of the side seam, I'll start cutting. And you can measure yours if you want. I just kind of wing things, and then I'll go all the way over to about an inch in front of that other seam. Now this side seam's a little shorter, but I don't care. That's just kind of the way the look is. Nothing's perfect. It'll be kind of frayed and not perfect. So I'll show you what I do next. What I want to do now is add something to the bottom of that top so that it starts looking like a dress. And so I thrifted this dress, and it kind of looks cuter on camera than it is in real life. It's just kind of frumpy and I don't know, not that cute, I don't think, but I do love the pattern and the fabric. This is kind of a chiffon feeling fabric, and it's lined, but I just want this piece. I don't want the lining, and I don't need the top portion, and this has an elastic waist. I'm just going to cut this off. I'm just cutting below the elastic, and I'll straighten out those edges when I get further along. Okay, so here I have the bottom of the dress cut off. It's nice and flowy and cute. And this one is about, from the top to the bottom, about 23 inches. So what I'll do now is, there are side seams on each side. I will put this right over top of the shirt, and I'm going to line up this side seam with this side seam, and I will overlap it about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch, and I'll stick a pin in it, and I'll come do the opposite side. You know, I looked online for one of these mannequins. They're really nice when you do a lot of sewing. That way you don't have to try everything on all the time. You can get a general, even though she's way smaller than me. I can get a general idea. Okay, so now I'm going to find the center here. I have the sides pinned, and find the approximate center of the top, and I will pin that. And then I'll do the same in the back. Okay, so that gives us a good start. Now I'm going to find the center again and pin that. And I'll just keep going around and doing that until my centers get smaller and smaller, and then I will sew it. And I will use a zigzag stitch. Now this will have sort of a raw edge, but the zigzag stitch will stop any excessive fraying. And I'm kind of all about the fraying. I really like that. So I'll just keep going around and pinning that to my shirt. Okay, so I have this pinned good enough. And when I go to my machine, like I said, I'll use a zigzag stitch. I'll probably use some sort of bluish thread because that's the common denominator of all my different patterns and stuff. They all have a little bit of blue in them, I think, except for one. And then I'll slide the bottom into my machine until I get up to this part. And then anything that's not pinned, I'll just kind of pinch it together as I go over it with the machine. And I'll just go all the way around. Here I am at my machine, and I slipped the bottom of the dress into the machine till I got to where I wanted to sew. And I'll just kind of keep peeking as I sew to make sure I'm about 1/2 inch overlap. And I'm on a larger zigzag stitch, forward, backward to lock it in, and I'll just go all the way around until I'm finished. Okay, so this is what I have so far. Now, I want to add a ruffle down at the bottom made out of the scarves. So I'm going to take my yardstick, and I want my dress to just almost touch the floor in the back. And so I look in the mirror usually, and I hold my yardstick to about where I want it to hit, not quite the floor, but almost. And for me, that's 8.5 inches. So I added 1/2 inch for seam allowance. So I actually went like an 8-inch ruffle, but I'm going 8.5 inches just so that I have room to sew. Okay, before I start cutting my scarves for the ruffle, I have this really huge scarf, and I want 1/2 of it for the sleeve, and I'll show you all that later. So I'm just going to start by cutting this in 1/2, and that way 1/2 can be for the sleeve, and I can use the other 1/2 for my ruffle, or for part of my ruffle at the bottom. So I'm just going to take my scissors. I just folded it in 1/2, I don't do a lot of measuring. And I'm just going to cut that in 1/2. Okay, so I have my dress kind of crumpled up here, but this is the bottom of my dress. And like I said, I want to do a ruffle. And a good rule of thumb, if you want to measure, is if you measure the circumference, basically, of the bottom of the dress, you want to double that measurement for a nice full ruffle. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. And so I'll set this aside. And these are the 3 scarves I'm going to be using for my ruffle. And so on each one of these at the bottom, I'm just going to cut 8.5 inches off. Now this one's all tattered because I washed it, but I think that's cute. I do not get uptight about stuff like that. I'm not going to try to straighten that because when I wash it again, it'll do the same thing. So I'll just leave it so that it looks intentional. So I will just take my ruler, And I'm not going to count these little fringes. I'm going to start at the bottom of the scarf and just lay my ruler down and start cutting to the 8.5-inch mark. And I'll do that to all of them. And then maybe I'll have another 8.5 inches somewhere, you know, the half of the scarf, maybe it will be 8.5 inches. Maybe it'll be too small, but I'm just cutting one strip basically off of each scarf. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so I actually got 4 pieces out of the scarves. That really large one that I cut in half, I was able to get 2 8.5-inch pieces out of it. And so when I put it on as a ruffle, I'll just make sure I separate these. So I have these 4 pieces, and I will not do any pinning here. I want to add this ruffle to the bottom of my dress. And what I'll do is I'll go to the side seam. That's usually where I start when I do ruffles and things like that. And I'll just choose whatever scarf I want. Yeah, I'll go with this one. And again, I will put this into my machine, the very bottom. I'll start wherever you want to start. And I'll lay my scarf about a 1/2 inch overlap. And as I sew, I'll be doing a zigzag again. Because these are fine and kind of chiffon-y, I like doing a zigzag. Zigzag just kind of holds things more secure when they're fine, or, you know, like lace that has a lot of gaps in it anyway. So I will, probably every few inches, I'll make about a 1-inch fold or a pleat, and then I'll sew over top of that. And another couple of inches, I'll do that again. And I will just do that all the way around, just making your own little pleats. You can have bigger ones, smaller ones. You know, this is just art. You just do what you want to do. Okay? And so when I get, let's say I'm sewing along and I get to where I started, or where one scarf started, I'll overlap about 3 or 4 inches and just continue doing the same thing. You know, you can sew these together if you want, but if you overlap it, you know, 4 inches, you're not going to get a lot of like legs showing. You won't really see a lot of gapping. It'll just seem flowier and more fun, I think. So I will go to my machine and I will get those sewn on. Okay, so here's what it looks like with the ruffles all sewn on. Don't mind my squeaky mannequin. I really need to get that oiled. Okay, so at this point, I'm not going to do this, but if you want, you can even add more ruffles throughout. If you take those remnants of those scarves that you cut, they're the shorter pieces, and you could just sew them throughout. Add more ruffles, let some dangle. You know, you can get as wild as you want, but I'm going to leave mine for now, and I'm going to start on the sleeves. Okay, for the sleeves, I am going to use 2 different scarves, and they are different sizes. And for me, that's okay. But if you want your sleeves to be exactly the same and the exact same length and everything, you can just find a larger scarf and cut that in half and put one on one side and one on the other. But I'm going to use 2 different ones. This one's a little longer and more narrow than the sleeve I'll use on that side. But what I do, and this is so simple, you're going to love it, you just fold the scarf in half and you find the center. And then I'm just going to lay the center right on top, right at the neckline. I'm covering that edge right there. And I'm going to pin that. And then I'm going to keep pinning until, I'm going to say about, on mine, about 4 inches. So the final pin will be about 4 inches from the first pin. But I'll stick a couple more little pins in there to hold it in place. And then I'll come around to the back and I'll just keep pinning that along the neckline. And this one will be about 3 inches away from that first pin that we put in there. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same to the opposite side, only with this scarf. It's that half that we cut. I'll find the center. And pin it right at the top here. And I'll do the same. I'll pin it about 4 inches down along the neckline on this side and about 3 inches along the neckline in the back. Okay, so I have this all pinned now, and I will just go to my machine and I'll just stitch from this very first pin up across the top to the very last pin, and I'll just do a zigzag stitch. That'll be super easy.